What's up, everyone, and welcome back in to the Charter Podcast presented by St. Xavier University. Week 10, the Bears suffer another loss, another game without scoring a touchdown. They lose to the Patriots at home, 19-3. I'm here with Kevin Lapka and Clay Harbor, and I'll start with you, Clay. Just your immediate reactions to, I didn't know that it could get worse, but one of the worst losses in recent years for the Bears.
Man, I mean, it's tough to put into perspective here. I've been on some bad teams, but this was one of the worst showings I've seen. I mean, offensively, this was not a good New England Patriots football team, and for them to come out there and just look like they didn't practice all week, they didn't have the semblance of a game plan, couldn't run it, couldn't throw it, was just bad. And then defensively, wasn't terrible, but you're getting run on by a team that isn't good against the run. They had 15 total yards from their running backs the previous week, and you're getting run on. It's an embarrassing game. Looks like the Shane Waldron at the very least shouldn't be calling the offensive plays. I honestly feel like after watching that debacle, that is not an overreaction. All three phases, even special teams weren't great today, and it was just an embarrassing loss for the organization, for the franchise, and everything. Moving forward, Caleb looked like he got outplayed by Drake May. There's just a lot to look at here, and it looks like something needs to be done. Nothing changes if nothing changes, and it looks like in Chicago right now there needs to be some changes.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'll toss it to you, Kev, because, you had some pretty strong opinions on, just Caleb in general. I think Clay mentioned it just now. He looked like he got outplayed by Drake May in a game that was sloppy and windy, and you can make all the excuses you want. But what did you see from Caleb today? Because, it was not one of his better performances, maybe his worst.
Yeah, probably definitely is worse. I think we can say that with safety, honestly. I mean, there's a lot to unpack here, right? And I think it's super hard. Like, let's acknowledge it's very hard for Bears fans to navigate these roads, right? Because, again, we've been through this, and we honestly don't know where to place the blame. We simply don't. We know that there is ineptitude at the coaching level, right? And the play calling. We know that the offensive line, specifically today with the guys that are in place, the backups, the reserves, and then Tevin Jenkins goes out and it gets worse. We know that that's in play. But with all that being said, I mean, I thought that there were plays Caleb Williams could have made throughout the day. I simply did. I thought that there were guys that he had open that he missed. I thought that you saw some of the same tendencies we've been seeing the past couple of weeks of him holding onto the ball and taking sacks. And I don't it's not all on him. We saw FanDuel make a post at halftime of if he's a bust. Let's not do that. We're not going to do that. But I think you can be reasoned, you can be measured in your analysis and say that he should have played better today. And I think he'd be the first person to tell you that. I'm sure he'll go up to that podium and say, hey, I needed to be better today to help my team win. And there were plays to be made out there. He didn't make them. And there's a variety of reasons for it. But at this point, when Clay, what you're talking about, like nothing's going to change. The same thing goes for the team and it goes for Caleb. I don't think anything will change regarding him unless there's a coaching change. Clearly, he's disappointed, uninterested in what the play calling has to offer, right? I think the rest of the offense is resonating that with the way that they've played. And have faith that they'll be able to pick things up and he'll be able to pick things up. But that's not going to happen unless there's a change at the play caller. That's not going to happen unless there's a change at head coach. This whole entire team needs a pickup from a cultural standpoint, from a camaraderie standpoint. And I think once you see that happen, you'll start to see Caleb play better. So I'm not necessarily pressing the panic button, but I think we can not press the panic button and also acknowledge that as the number one overall pick with the expectations that we set for him, he should have been better today. I think both things can be true.
Definitely both things can be true. And, I'll give you a good example. On the Respect Coin podcast, I gave out over 2.5 catches for Cole Kmet. He had 2 catches on one drive. And the first play of that drive, a really wayward ball thrown to Cole Kmet out of his reach, definitely open, should have hit it. That would have been the third catch. So totally agree with you. Caleb definitely needs to play better. One interesting thing I heard, during the broadcast, DJ, the color announcer, was saying the wide receivers got to win their one-on-one matchups more. I mean, I think, we all saw all of the blitzes. They weren't even hiding or disguising these blitzes by the end of the game. They were just kind of running. For all my Madden players, they were just running Engage 8. They were just sending everyone in there, and they were getting home. And, like you said, it's hard to place all the blame on Caleb. I think he does deserve a lot of the blame. He has not been sharp for the last 3 weeks, to say the least. But my frustration is very much landing on the play calling. I mean, how many more times are we going to watch that stupid swing play that's going to get DJ Moore killed? Because everybody knows it's coming as soon as he runs out there. So I don't know, because I've never played, I've never been in locker rooms, but Clay, from your perspective as a former player, how frustrating is it as, a member of the team, a veteran who knows what they're capable of? Like, I think of guys like Keenan Allen who have been 1,000-yard receivers year in and year out. When you're looking at the play calls and you're, hearing them and Caleb's reading them out, is there a level of like eye roll, like, here we go again, same old stuff? Like, take me into that side of it as a player.
Yeah, I want to backtrack a little bit just to talk about what you guys are saying. And firstly, I don't think the problem is the receivers getting open. Yeah, maybe they could be a little bit better, but these guys are professionals. DJ Moore, can you make an argument that he's not a good receiver? No. Keenan Allen is still a good. Roman Wadunze can play. Cole Kmet can play and get open. There's a difference between college open and NFL open. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. Sometimes you got to throw it before the player's open. You got to throw it in a place where only your man can get it when the guy's covered and it's one-on-one. To me, right now, Caleb isn't seeing that. He's a guy that needs to see it right now for it to happen. He needs to see it open. Sometimes you got to throw it and just anticipate your player's going to be open. You got to throw into holes that you didn't think were going to be there. You got to be able to anticipate and go through your reads and progress to make some plays. That being said, he did miss some open throws. Like you said, the Cole Kmet ball, there was a third down where he ended up running on fourth down and getting the first down. But on third down, he just completely whiffed, missed a wide open play to Keenan Allen or DJ Moore, I forget which one it was. Caleb has a lot of growing to do. Caleb does. The receiving core, I don't put much on them. Offensive line has some blame. But once again, Caleb Williams, on half his sacks, I mean, there's nine sacks, man, 9 sacks. On at least half these sacks, Caleb's holding the ball too long. Obviously, some of them were when the game was out of hand. But in the heat of the moment, early in the game, he's holding on to the ball too long the first 2 sacks, 100%. Yeah, I don't know if it's because one of them, I saw the replay, you could see the all-22. He needs to hit DeAndre Swift.
Yep.
The next one, you can't see the all-22, but you just see him, he's sitting there holding the ball. Either there wasn't an outlet or he's just not finding someone or somebody's not open. So that one wasn't on the offensive line. This offensive line is not good, but Caleb could help them out a little bit more. And then finally, when we got to get to the play calling here, obviously. And this is the weird part because Shane Waldron, it's not his first job.
Right.
This ain't the first time he's called plays. He's had success somewhere else. So I'm wondering, did he forget how to call plays? Because some of these plays just don't make sense. And for you, like you're saying, Michael, when you're talking about the DJ Moore swing pass, I don't hate that play. That was a called run. That was run pass option.
Yep.
A chance to throw to you're creating multiple. If Keenan Allen makes that block, DJ runs probably for 15 yards. The draw at the end of the game. I don't love the call, but if Coleman Shelton doesn't get beat like a stepchild that just stole his dad's last dollar, then that play would have been wide open. There was nothing in the middle of the field. So some of it falls on him because of the execution, and then some of it falls on him because of, yes, the actual call. But overall, all-encompassing, which I think a big part of it has to do with execution, which does come back to him too. What are you teaching these guys? They can't block on the perimeter on half these plays. DeAndre Swift had a play that if he stays outside, he could be scoring a touchdown. Instead, he cuts it back. I mean, there's something like, what are you teaching? What are your keys? So it comes back to him. It's not all the play calls, but all-encompassing with, obviously, the execution of it. It looks like to me that there's got to be something done.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and I appreciate you kind of like laying that out. I think that's a really good way for fans like myself and people listening to like really understand the backside of this, because I watch as a fan and I'm like, how have you run a lot of these plays in practice throughout the week, and like you're running them against your guys, maybe you're not going full speed. That might be a whole different topic to discuss, but I feel like as a play caller, if you're running this stuff in practice and you're feeling really good about it, and then you're running it against, by all accounts, the team with the worst record in the league, a team you're 6.5-point favorites over at home, and the stuff's just not working, like what are adjustments that you could make? Like what adjustments would you have made to the play calling today based on, the game script? Because it really got out of hand and it was like really never in question for the Patriots. I mean, like the Patriots pretty much controlled wire to wire and they win by 16 points on the road.
For me, you got to do more quick passes. And obviously Caleb is not reading the downfield plays. And I was the one that was calling for, hey, let's run the ball and then do some play action off of that and get the ball in the middle of the field to Cole Kmet. Spread these guys. This is not a good passing. I had a stat here. This is not a good passing defense. This passing defense is in the bottom third of the NFL. Run defense, bottom third of the NFL. I thought there'd be some holes. But for some reason, obviously we didn't see all the all-22, but Caleb isn't seeing it. He wasn't seeing it downfield, and he's holding the ball an awful long time. So quick passes. And you saw with Drake May. Drake May is doing a little bit better job stepping up in the pocket, throwing quick passes. And they just had absolutely no rhythm, even on the hurry up when they're on the field and Caleb's calling the plays from the line. Usually that's something he does very well. And I was arguing for that. Keep doing that. He obviously is comfortable in that situation. Keep that muddle huddle, that sugar huddle, whatever you want to call it. Keep that going. Let him call from the line and see the defense. That's not working. So, I mean, they got out coached, they got outplayed, they got out everything. Kevin, what were your thoughts from the rhythm of the game?
Well, I mean, here's the thing that I'm taking away right now as a Bears fan who's obviously focused on the future now. I mean, their hopes of the playoffs are pretty much been dashed at this point. That's been diminished, and it's done. It's done. We said that last week. We figured that it was
capital. We're back at looking at draft,
which may not be the worst thing.
Well, I mean, no, it's pretty bad, Mike.
I don't know, man. Like you can't rebuild a complete offensive line without having draft capital.
Yeah, I mean and we'll get there. I'm sure we'll see some mock drafts this week already here, November 10th. We're already there. But the thing that I'm looking at, and here's the kind of question I have for you guys. We want to see progression from Caleb Williams. We saw pretty linear progression from Caleb Williams at the start of the year. Wasn't very good the first couple of weeks. Starts to pick it up against Los Angeles, Carolina, and Jacksonville. Boom, he's playing really well in London. He comes back, regression. And that's never what you want to see with anybody, but specifically with a rookie of his caliber. And the thing I start to worry about as a scarred Bears fan, and we can take it to about 3 years ago, there was a game very, very, very similar to this for Justin Fields in his rookie year against the Cleveland Browns, where he was sacked how many times? 9 times. How many times was Caleb Williams sacked today by the New England Patriots? 9 times. A lot of Bears fans, for the duration and the remainder of Justin Fields' career, went back to that game and said that was a game that caused irreparable damage to the career of Justin Fields. After that game, he felt shaky in the pocket. He didn't have confidence in offensive line. He was rushing out of there. He looked like a different player. And I don't want to believe that that's what we just saw in this game is irreparable damage done to Caleb Williams. I don't think we're there yet. But if we keep seeing this trend of regression and in the following weeks, especially if they don't make a change at play card and a change of head coach, the question is like, when does that panic set in? Because I'm torn on it for 2 reasons. One, I believe teams in general let up on their quarterbacks way too early in the NFL. I think we see it way too often, and these players deserve time. Caleb Williams, of course, deserves time. I thought Anthony Richardson deserved more time in Indianapolis, right? I think a bunch of other young QBs have deserved more time.
Yeah,
we don't have that luxury.
Good today.
He did not. Exactly. We don't have the luxury in Chicago to wait, right? I mean, the team is good. The expectations are high. The pressure is there. He doesn't have 3 years to find this progression. It needs to happen in year 1. Like it simply does. So the question I have for you guys is, if this regression continues, I haven't hit the panic button yet, and I don't think people will for a while, but like, when do you get concerned? When does that first level of concern set in on, hey, like, this is bad for his long-term career as a player, not just 2024, but beyond. When you guys start having that conversation?
Oh, the concern happened last week. And now after this
Okay.
week, it's getting real concerning. And I know we're keeping an eye on the presser. And when asked, Matt Eberflus asked if it's a possibility of changing play callers. This week he says, we'll look at everything. Last week he says, we'll look internally. So now what that says to me is Matt Eberflus. But here's another thing. One of Matt Eberflus's biggest failures has been that this guy doesn't know how to hire a staff. Let's go back to his defensive coordinator. He had to fire him. His last defensive coordinator, Luke Getsy, fired him. Now Shane Waldron, you're going to demote him, go on your third offensive coordinator. Head coaches don't get a third offensive coordinator. You just don't get that. You can't hire a third offensive coordinator and you stay there and say, hey, it's still the offensive coordinator. No, that's 3. But to go back to your original question, I'm concerned. Caleb is obviously not seeing some things, and I expected more. I hoped for more. The generational talent, seeing him play against the kids at USC, he's like, can he do that stuff in the NFL? It's not a typical quarterback. Mahomes isn't a typical. Mahomes got to sit behind Alex Smith and had Andy Reid in his ear coaching him. Okay, and this situation is not the same as that. So maybe if he got to sit, he had Andy Reid coaching him. He had Alex Smith to watch. I mean, different story, but coming in now, he got outplayed by Drake May. Concerning. He got outplayed by Jaden Daniels. Concerning. Bo Nix should have beat Patrick Mahomes today. Concerning. Okay, these are rookie quarterbacks that are winning games. We just put up 3 points against a bad defense with Caleb Williams at our helm, with a really good receiving core. I still believe they're a really good receiving core and a good tight end. Offensive line, below average, but you got to get the ball out a little bit quicker. So, yeah, I'm getting concerned.
Yeah, the concern level is really high. And, I agree with basically everything you just said, Clay. And I'll go back to a little conversation we had on this show last week. And, hindsight's, 2020. But when you think about, head coach is not getting a third offensive coordinator, I think that's a really important point you just made, Clay, because while Matt Eberflus is saying we'll look at everything now, I think that the focus should be on Matt Eberflus. It's really funny to me that he's coming to the podium because he has to, I think he's really measured in what he talks about. But him looking at everything, it should be Ryan Poles and Kevin Warren looking at everything. And the truth is, you look in the division, we're about to play the gauntlet, the strongest strength of schedule to finish the year. I look at Green Bay. They've got an offensive-minded head coach. Their quarterback's in place. Detroit Lions, they have a defensive-minded coach with one of the best offensive coordinators in the game who will be a head coach next year, no doubt. They've got Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota, quarterback in waiting. He got hurt, brilliant offensive mind. And here we are, the Chicago Bears, a defensive coach who's done a decent job, calling defensive plays.
Hey, but our defense is solid, though.
But the defense is solid, right? That's why you brought me here. If he was our defensive coordinator, I would feel really good about it. But the truth is, he's supposed to manage this entire organization and be the leader. And I think that the eyeballs need to be on him more than anything. And you mentioned that the coaches that had to be let go, that he's hired. At some point, you have to just you got to face the music, right? He is in a position where he has to make a critical decision within the next 12 hours on how he wants to potentially save his job, if his job is even safe.
The job's gone.
I think at this point, for me, if they fired him tomorrow morning, I would be as optimistic as I could be as a Bears fan, because I think what we spoke about last week was really important. Are we losing the locker room? Are we taking the joy away from Caleb Williams? All of those things manifested today. The body language was bad. Everyone looked checked out. The fans were booing, chanting "Fire Flus" on the way out. All of it got worse before it got better, as I kind of stated last week. And now it feels like you're at a crucial turning point. Do you do something you've never done as an organization to set the standard? We're not going to ruin this. We're not going to fall back into that same trap. And I don't necessarily believe that they're going to do that.
I think go ahead, Kevin.
No, I mean, real quick, I just have to say that it's so frustrating because all of this was avoidable. Every single bit of this was avoidable. We sat here, wherever we weren't a part of CHSN at the time, but we sat wherever we were in January saying there's no way they can keep this guy around, right? They're going to draft a rookie quarterback. They can't do this cycle again, right? And they reeled us in. They reeled us in, and I'm victim of it. Hard Knocks got me really excited, and we're back here at this point, and we're in that same cycle. Every bit of this was avoidable. You have to remind yourself of that, and it just goes to show the organizational malpractice. Go ahead, Clay. Sorry.
No, I'll say this too. So there's a couple of things I want to get to. First is this culture that Matt Eberflus loves. That culture he has there, the positive, the overachieving, that culture is fun. It's all nice and good and looks good. But you know who else had that culture? Gus Bradley in the Jacksonville Jaguars when I was there. I went from the Eagles to the Jaguars to the Patriots. Okay? Andy Reid. That culture wasn't the uplifting, strive for victory, this great, friendly, everybody's pulling. No, your culture is great, but what matters more? Accountability. Eagles, accountability, number one thing. Patriots, accountability, discipline, do your job. Main thing. Those are championship level head coaches, not just having a culture about, okay, getting better, and making excuses. It's accountability. And I don't see the culture as a positive thing in Chicago. It's cool to play with unless you have an extremely veteran group that has been around the league and knows what it takes to win games and how much it takes to put in there. That culture will never work because the players have been through the system. They know how the NFL works. They know how much you have to prepare. They know how you have to take accountability for every single snap. To me, that culture doesn't work unless you have a very veteran group. The next thing, I want to get to Shane Waldron. Matt Eberflus, the question isn't if he's going to be the head coach next year or not, Michael. He's gone next year. The question is he going to get to finish out this season? Right. To me, that's the only question that's left. Is he going to finish out this year, or is he going to get fired at the end of the season, even though we did hear that now instead of a 4-year contract, he has 5. But I don't think even with that, sorry, you have to let him go. Shane Waldron cannot be your play caller anymore, right? Here's a couple numbers for you guys. Week 1, first quarter, 0 points. Week 2, first quarter, 3 points. Week 3, first quarter, 0 points. Week 4, 0 points. Week 5, 7. Week 6, 0, 8, 0, 9, 0, 10, 0. One of the most important things you can do for an offense is start fast. The first 15, are we scripting? Are we not scripting? Are we gonna get a script? He needs a whole dang screenplay, not the script, man. This guy needs it. He needs the whole thing. Well, it is not working. How do you come into a game after game planning for the entire week, after an entire bye week on one of these occasions, and not come away with any points, any yards, barely getting first downs? The second thing that I think is most important, third down. Yep. These last 3 games, guess what the Bears are out of 39 tries on third down? Just throw out a number. 50% is what you strive for, 39 tries, so you want to be about
10.
20.
I'll say 7.
6. 6 for 39 on third down.
And they mentioned on the broadcast too that they've had the most struggles from 3rd and 3. And from my seat as a fan, I don't know this to be absolutely true, but I've watched enough football to know, if you have a 2nd and 10, you're desperate to get the 3rd and 3 because then you have you can use the whole playbook. Yeah,
3rd and 3 is like a 68% conversion complete, 3rd and 4. It just go every, yardage. They go off these percentages. But to go 6 for 39, us 3 could sit up here and call third down plays, and I bet we could go 10 for 39. Just talking about, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to run. No, Shane Waldron, I'm sorry. Are you not practicing third down on your typical Thursday third down practice day? There's a whole day of practice that is third down and blitz. In all the 9 years I played in the NFL, that with the Patriots, with the Eagles, the Jaguars, the Lions. Yeah, I know I played for a lot of teams, Kevin. Stop chuckling back there. But every Thursday is third down. You're going to be prepared for crowd noise. They're going to pump in some noise, even if you're at home, make it a little bit harder. And you're going to get every blitz. You're going to see the blitzes, and you're going to have a third down package. To me, it looks like the Bears are just skipping their Thursday practice. There's no semblance of doing anything on third down. 6 of 39, you're not going to win any games in the NFL going 6 of 39 on third down.
Longest streak in the NFL active right now of consecutive drives without a touchdown. Another damning stat from today. But, I mean, this is now the second game in a row where you could feel like, all right, let's just throw it in the trash. And my POV, if I was the head coach and I was fighting for my job, which it's clear Matt Eberflus is doing, like, I don't know how you address the team. Like, what's the message? I feel like they would like any message at this point. If you talk about the stupid hits principle and all these little acronyms, like that's going to fall flat with veteran players, isn't it, Clay?
Yeah, you can't go into that. You can't go into that meeting room and have the same meeting. And what are the players going to meet about this week? You're hearing about, the players had a meeting. They had a meeting. You know who's going to be meeting this week? The GM, the president, and the owner. Yep. And you know what they're going to be talking about? Are we firing Shane Waldron? Are we firing Matt Eberflus? Are we firing both of these guys? Who's going to be our head coach moving forward? Who's going to be calling the plays? It's not a player meeting anymore. This is going to be a meeting of the ownership and the brass. And one other thing I want to talk about is your offensive line. And some of this has to go back to Ryan Poles. This is the deepest group we've had since I've been here. Obviously, you're not going to have your right tackle and your left tackle out for a lot of games here. Right. But coming in to the game, the last 6 games combined, how many sacks did the Patriots have? Take a guess. 6 games.
7.
4.
They had 8 sacks. They had 8 sacks total in 6 games. Today, they had 9. 6 games versus 1 game. One's an outlier here, fellas. One's an outlier. Back-to-back 6 sacks game. For the first time since 1993, Kevin wasn't alive. Michael was 3. Okay, I was about 7, 8 years old. Didn't know what I was doing. That's the last time they gave up 6 sacks in back-to-back games. This is historically bad Bears football, and we're so used to it as covering the Bears and being around the Bears and Bears fans, and we're so used to it that it doesn't seem that odd. But you guys everybody that's listening to this need to realize how out of place this really is. First time since 1993. 8 sacks in the last 6 games. They had 9 today. Something has to be done. There was a major miss somewhere. And now accountability, you lost it with your head coach. You lost it with your offensive coordinator. Now it comes down to, can your GM keep his accountability and fire the head coach and the offensive coordinator?
That's exactly right. Kev, I'm going to toss to you because my suggestion for this, I mean, like, we got to go full wacky mode now, right? Like,
oh boy,
do we just have like an open tryout at Lane Stadium for offensive line? There's got to be big guys that can block. In the video that we got sent, there was a big trash can in the middle of the walkway, and I'm like, that thing could probably block better than the offensive lineman we tried it out there
video
today,
with that guy that he's like pretending to pat down people.
Just let him through. Just let him through.
He's letting everybody through.
Kev, give me your take, man. How do we go forward from here? It's Sunday. The Bears just lost 19-3 at Soldier Field. What's your next step if you are in charge?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we look at it this way. If the head coach isn't fired on Monday, it's once again organizational malpractice. That's simply the way I look at it. You are a better team tomorrow if you fire the head coach, given what we have seen. And if you don't do that, what does it show about you as a GM? What does it show about you as chairman if you're George McCaskey, right? And it's that same old cycle, and it's that unwillingness to do what's required to break the norm and break through for a team that hasn't been able to. I'm sorry, I know it's against your tradition or whatever. You've never done it. Well, guess what? If you want things to be different, then this has to be different too. That's simply the way this has to go. And if they don't fire him tomorrow, it's the wrong decision. It is 100% the wrong decision, and it has to be done. So if you're listening to this, we recorded this Sunday at 4:00. He could very well be fired this evening, and this part of the podcast will be irrelevant, right? But if it hasn't happened at that point, I mean, seriously, what are we doing? That's the only way forward. Clay, I thought you made a great point. It was evident it was palpable, the lack of interest those players had on that field, specifically on offense. I thought the defense still was flying to the ball, still playing well late in the game, but you could see it on Caleb Williams' face, on DJ Moore's face. These guys did not want to be out there playing for their head coach, and that is the most damning thing of any of it, is seeing your players not willing to play for their head coach, not willing to play for their city, not willing to play for the name on their jersey. And that's, I'm not criticizing the players for that. That's just what happens when you go through something like this. Those are the effects. And the reason to correlate to what you're talking about is the only way to fix that is if you get a new voice in the building and you get rid of it and you have some sort of idea that as a player, okay, leadership is willing to make the change. Leadership is willing to do whatever it takes to make our team better. And if they don't do that, then it would show to me, I've never played, I've never been in a locker room, but it would show to me if I were a player, they are okay with complacency. They are okay with the status quo. And they've been okay with the status quo for the past 100 years of this franchise. Yeah. So that's the only way forward. Am I wrong? What else is there to do?
Here's the way you got to think of it, right? You've seen enough of Matt Eberflus, right? And even if he does comes back and wins 8 games and improves, is Matt Eberflus a Super Bowl winning coach that from what we've seen in 3 years? Do you think he's the guy that can bring a championship to Chicago? Because that's what you want, a leader that will bring a championship. And I can honestly say, no, guy's a solid defensive coordinator, but he is not a guy that's going to bring a championship to Chicago. And the guy that I think has escaped a lot dodging bullets, and he like Neo in the Matrix. I don't know how he's just getting out the way. He ain't taking any of these shots. He ain't catching any of these shots. Ryan Poles. Yeah. He needs to be held accountable too. I mean, we go back to Velus. You drafted Velus Jones instead of drafting an offensive lineman. You traded a draft pick for Chase Claypool instead of a draft pick we could have used an offensive lineman because he made the big deal with the Panthers. Anybody could have made that deal. Let's be honest. Any GM that got the first pick in the draft that year, thank you, Lovie Smith. Lovie Smith comes through with the big W, gets the number 1 pick, and trades down. Teams were willing to trade that. That wasn't willing and dealing and you setting up a roster. That was you getting lucky to be in a situation to where you got the number 1 pick and you're able to do that because teams were getting desperate for trying to take a shot on a quarterback. Besides that, take that off the screen, off the table. Ryan Poles, to me, has not done a good job of being a GM. He has done a substandard job of building through the trenches. He did that with Justin. Yeah,
let's not forget the Nate Davis thing. I mean, Nate Davis has been a healthy scratch a few times. He's making $30 million. And I think something that you said, Kevin, just about the vibe and the body language, like I think DJ Moore as an athlete is a very good wide receiver. As a person, he seems like a really solid dude, really chill, really reserved. I've never seen anyone who's making $110 million look so upset. I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
And he's played with bad quarterbacks his whole career. So he knows, like, this is not like new territory for him to not get the ball in the place he wants it or things like that. Like, generally speaking, he seems really pissed off. And I don't blame him.
We talked about this. Me and Kevin literally talked about this the other day. Last year, his passer rating when targeted, DJ Moore, was 120. This year, before today, was 85. Last year, when targeting DJ Moore, he had a 74 completion percentage when targeted. This year, 60. Last year, he had a 15 yards per catch average. This year, 10. Some of it's offensive coordinator. Some of it is the quarterback. You're playing with a rookie quarterback. You got the growing pains. But yeah, I mean, he's getting frustrated because this guy has been shown to be quarterback proof, and this year he's not.
And I think it's just not even about like the play. Like real quick, Mike, it's I think part of it for like a guy like DJ Moore is sure he takes the money, $110 million. That's great. He comes to Chicago and he sees the team that's being built around him. Right? Like objectively a very talented football team. Like we're not going to roll that back just because they're 4-5, but they're a talented football team. And the expectation at the start of the year was this is going to be a playoff team. After week 6, this was potentially a team that could make noise in the playoffs, right? These guys want to win. He signed a contract extension here because he saw this as a place where I can win, and I didn't do it in Carolina. I can win here. We're building something special. And to sort of see that crumble in front of his eyes after signing that contract extension, I think that's part of the big reason you're seeing some of these guys just show that visible disappointment in what's going on. The expectation was we're going to win.
Yeah, and now you're sitting at 4-5 after week 10, and I mean, we've gotten 30 minutes through this, and now we have to talk about what lies ahead. And here comes the big bad wolf into town. I've been to a handful of these Bears-Packers games over the last few years, and we've lost them all. Clay, I want to ask you, because I know we've talked a little bit about, does Waldron lose his duties? Do they even go so far as to letting both of them go? I don't see it happening from like the top down. But if you get rid of a play caller or a head coach for that matter on the week before the biggest game of the season, rivalry, you're playing at home, what does that do from a locker room perspective? Like, I know that we've talked a lot about breathing a breath of fresh air. It could galvanize the group. It worked for the Saints today. They played much better after firing their head coach, and the Falcons didn't, they kind of helped them out a little bit. But there is that kind of like, you buy in on the motivation factor if you do make a change. Is that something that you think could really help this team going forward?
Honestly, looking at this, I don't see what you gain from firing Eberflus besides accountability from the organizational standpoint. Mm-hmm. To me, that's what it'd be showing. Because you're not giving a guy an opportunity that's on the staff to be your head coach, because I don't think they have a head coach on the staff. Right. I'm sorry, that's not the head coach. You're going to go out there at the end of the year and you're going to find a new head coach. So as far as, they're doing this to give this guy an opportunity to play himself into a job, no. But what you are doing is you're showing from the top that this isn't good enough. Mediocrity is not good enough. Losing to the worst team in the NFL, if the draft was held, yesterday now, not today, or if the draft was held yesterday, the team that would have the number 1 overall pick, lose to them at home, where you've won 8-9 straight games. They haven't won on the road. The Patriots haven't won a road game in 4, but they're 0-4 in their last 4 road games with a rookie quarterback, and to come in and get embarrassed, you'd be showing accountability if you fire your head coach. You're not going to gain something by getting a head start on the job search. No, there's never been a correlation with that. You're just showing accountability. Play calling, offensive coordinator-wise, you would have a different flow to the game. There's maybe somebody likes different schemes better. You gotta talk to these guys. Eberflus has got to go in, but obviously he's shown he doesn't have the ability to do offensive football. He hired Luke Getsy. Luke Getsy didn't even make it halfway through his second job this year with the Raiders. He kept him on staff for 2 years. Okay? So then that gives me, what that says to me is this guy doesn't know how to hire offensive play callers. But at this point, it's worth a gamble to see, what can Kerry Joseph do? Can Thomas Brown do any better? Give one of these guys an opportunity. Bring both these guys into your office. Talk to them. If you were the offensive coordinator, what is your strategy moving forward? What would you do different than Shane Waldron? Do you think you can handle this job? And then see what they have to say. And honestly, at this point, it can't get any worse. I'll reiterate, 6 of their last 39 on third down. They've scored like 13 points total in the first quarter. It can't get worse.
No, you're right. It can't. And that's why I think making a change is something that I feel like will help at the very least, like you said, issue some accountability, let people know, let the fans know for I think we've talked a lot, and I know I've talked to you about this, Kev, because I'm going to owe you $100 if they do make a change at head coach. But the truth is, if they make a change in the play caller, that would be a signal to me like, okay, we hear you guys. The fire Flus chants outside of Soldier Field, maybe firing the head coach is maybe doing too much. But at some point, I've been around watching this team for 30 years, not 30 exactly, but most of my entire life. And they've never done this before. It's crazy to me to think of all the quarterbacks we've gone through, of all the head coaches we've gone through, that they've never made a change at head coach during this tenure of the McCaskies. Because what you're saying, Clay, is correct. It's like, just prove to us as fans, prove to the rest of the league as, contemporaries that you're willing to do something different. The narrative forever was we're not going to do Hard Knocks because we don't want the people in our building. Come to find out, they decide to do it, and there's edit controls, so nobody can swear. So we really didn't get Hard Knocks, but we did turn a page, right? They were like, we'll move into the modern era. We'll open our doors for you. Continue that. Continue that by making a change. Continue that so you can prove to your 22-year-old quarterback, who many people have said is the best prospect coming out, and we've heard all this nonsense, like, prove to him that, like, if things aren't going right, maybe we're not going to put all the onus on you. But if we're going to bring you a new guy, we're going to prove that to you. Now it's for you to step up and show us why you deserve to be the number one pick. Because we're just talking about insanity. Doing the same things over, expecting different results, and it's just not happening.
If you want to take it to the short term too, like, let's be real here. If I had to ask you, you think the Bears have a better chance of winning next Sunday against the Green Bay Packers with Matt Eberflus or with the interim head coach, whoever it may be? What's your answer to that question? Legitimately.
They're not going to win.
Well, I know, but what gives them a better chance? I truly think that whoever it would probably be, defensive coordinator, Washington would have to, I don't know who would slide in. Maybe Richard Hightower, special teams coordinator, slides in. We don't know, right? But that renewed sense of, all right, there's something different in the building. How often do we see this? This is one of my favorite betting trends, is betting on teams that are starting an interim head coach in the next game. You saw it today in New Orleans. You saw it with New Orleans. They fired Dennis Allen. Darren Rizzi moves in. They beat the Atlanta Falcons at home, right? Since 2010, teams have an 18-15 record in their first game with interim head coach. So obviously it's not damning numbers, but think about those teams that are firing head coaches. They're pretty bad already. Yeah. So for them to go 18-15 after that, I think in the short term, if you were to fire the head coach, it actually sends a message to the team of, hey, we're still trying to win next week against the Green Bay Packers. We know that there's one thing that George McCaskey cares about and Virginia McCaskey care about. They want to beat the Green Bay Packers. And if they internally can come to the decision that we might actually have a better chance to beat the Green Bay Packers and maybe just play spoiler to their season, is really the only incentive to that at this point, we might have a better chance to do that with an interim head coach. And I know that sounds crazy from the outside looking in, but the stats show it. The stats show it, and we see it. Do you remember last year in Vegas, and we saw a glimpse of it in the receiver show when I'm blanking on who was
Antonio Pierce.
Right, but who was the head coach before him?
McDaniels.
It was McDaniels, right. Miserable there in Vegas. And Devonta Adams was leading the charge in that, and you could see it on his face, similar to what we're seeing from DJ Moore. And we got a glimpse of it in that receiver show. The game that after McDaniels is fired, Pierce comes in, they win, and they were smoking cigars in the locker room. They were partying like they just won the damn Super Bowl. It's a totally different environment. And that's why if they want to win next week, I mean, let's be honest. Like, I know you're talking about draft pick, Mike. I want them to beat the Packers.
Me too.
I want them to beat the Packers.
I don't want anything more in my life, dude. We've watched so many times the Packers come here and kick our ass. Like, I don't want to watch that anymore. Like, if they win next week with a new voice, I will be extremely happy. But let's be real about it. Like we keep saying, are we going to be better prepared to win from the top down? No. Will we have the better head coach? No. Will we have the better play caller? No. Like, there's so many things stacked against us right now that, like, it's hard as a fan. And one of the things that I've realized over the last few weeks is, like, I was texting in the group today and I was like, they're not going to win. And I hate that. Like, I feel like that. It's not even jaded. It's just like pessimism that comes from reality. It's like, I cannot let myself get excited about this as I have years, like year in, year out. I have tickets to next week's game. I texted my buddy I'm like, if they don't make a change, like, just sell them, bro. Like, just sell them and make some money. Because we're going to go there and we're going to drink in the South Lot and we're going to have a blast and we're going to be all fired up and we're going to go watch them score 6 points and get beat by our biggest rival again. Like, that's the insanity we're talking about if you don't do something different. So I know we've beat the horse dead at this point, but Clay, I want to get your final thoughts, man. Like, we do have the rivalry game coming up. We have 6 games in the division remaining starting next week. You throw a game against the Niners in there. You throw a game against Seattle in there. There's a really bad stench around this team right now, but I just want to get your closing thoughts because, you know, it's pretty tough around here these days.
Yeah, I mean, this was one of the most demoralizing losses. I feel like we said that last week and the week before in recent Bears memory. And as a player, man, you go into days like this after the game, and you go watch the tape, and obviously you look at yourself and see what you could have done better. But then you go, why are we doing that? Why are we in this situation? And I'm looking at an offensive perspective. I'm an offensive guy, so I can't speak as much on the defense, but I really do think that it's time to consider switching offensive play callers. Like I've said, what Eberflus firing would do would definitely show accountability from the top down, something that Eberflus lost with the whole debacle at the Hail Mary. Feels like they're still carrying that with them. Hasn't been the same team since that play happened, since a bye week, honestly. So I think my personal feelings is you keep Eberflus for now. You let him play this out. You get a new play caller in there, and you just try to build off improving. Right now, it comes down to improving Caleb Williams. Find a way to help this guy complete some passes, build some confidence. And it doesn't look like, unless a miracle happens, it doesn't look like they're going to be in contention this year. So that has to be your sole responsibility right now. What can we do to improve Caleb Williams for this franchise, for this team, for this city? It comes down to one thing, and that is, what can we do to help Caleb Williams grow? Because right now he is your franchise, the number one overall pick. You could have took any kid in the nation, any quarterback you wanted. Could have traded that pick down for a billion other picks. You took Caleb Williams. Right now, what can we do? Ryan Poles' whole job this season, with this loss, you can pretty much throw in the garbage. It's over. You're not making the playoffs. I'm sorry, you're not.
It's not.
Now, what can we do to help Caleb become better and become a franchise quarterback that we can win games with, that we can win a division with, and ultimately, why you do this, that you can win a championship with? So that's it. Moving forward, this comes down to helping Caleb Williams grow and become the guy that you need him to be for the Chicago Bears, to be a player in the NFC North and in the NFC and in the NFL. That's what it is.
Kevin, last thoughts?
Yeah. I got to disagree with Clay. I don't see how they proceed with Matt Eberflus as the head coach. I just don't. I 100% have to change the play caller, but I don't see a path for that. I don't see a reason for it. I cannot find one reason. And I think, like, for Bears fans, it's super easy in hindsight to look back at this point and say, okay, they're 4-5. We didn't really expect them to be in the playoffs. We didn't really think that, Caleb Williams was going to have that good of a rookie year. Let's take a step back. No, don't do that.
That's a heavy dose of copium right there.
Exactly. At the start of this year and after week 6, remember the conversations we had about this team. This is a team that was built financially as well to be a contender in the NFC. Let's not forget that, all right? And I know that's rubbing salt in the wound, but it goes to show what kind of failure we're looking at right here. This is a team that was supposed to be contending for not necessarily the division, but a wild card to get in the playoffs, something we haven't seen in 4 years, a playoff win that we haven't seen since, 2011, right? That just goes to show the type of incompetence we have seen to this point. And it's sad, it's depressing, but for me, the only way forward is to make a change significant enough to show the team, the fans, the rest of the league that, hey, things are different. We mean business now. Things aren't going to be the same going forward. And that's one of the only ways that you can do that. So that's really the only thing I'm looking at going forward is I think that has to happen. We don't know if it will. Again, he might get fired an hour after we stop recording this, and this is going to be a silly thing, right? Like, we really don't know. And I'm going to sound like an idiot. But that's my parting thoughts. Is just like, for me, especially as an optimistic fan, Mike, I know you are too. I mean, Clay, we all are, right? We're fans of this team at the end of the day. We want to see them win. Yep. And to see the type of expectation we were fed at the start of the year and to what it is now, it's just, it's a damning realization.
Yeah, it's been brutal, but I agree with you guys' thoughts. I do think that we need a change. I do hope that the defense doesn't start to check out, because that would make this even worse. They played really hard. They did a lot of bend, don't break, and the offense just couldn't kind of, help them out on the other end. So I've been depressed to do these, but I said this to Clay on Monday last week. Like, I felt lighter walking into the office because I kind of vented and got it all off my chest. But big week. It's Packers week, and all the eyes are going to be on the coaching staff. And, you know, the press conferences will be loud, and the players may even speak up more than they have previously. We'll wait and see. We might get Alex Shapiro back to be host. If I do go to the game, I won't be on the post game. Hopefully I'm not drinking my sorrows away after another loss to the Packers, but you know, that's a very stark reality, right? And I do think your point about the expectations is really well taken. Like, you can play nice now and say, oh, well, it was just about Caleb's development and yada, yada, yada.
7-10 team. They were 7-10. This wasn't a typical team that you're coming into as a number 1 overall pick. What were they, 4 of their last 2? They should have beat the Lions. They lost some close games there. This was a team that wasn't that far off. And for them to look how they do now with the number 1 overall pick, after you get Keenan Allen, with everything you had going with the defense moving forward from last year, very, very damning at this point.
Yeah. It's tough, and, you know, I hope it gets better before it gets worse, but it doesn't feel like that's the reality. So I'm going to sign us off here. I'm Michael Bolling for Kevin Lapka, for Clay Harbor. This has been the Charter Podcast presented by St. Xavier University. We'll cross our fingers for some news that we're trying to see, and hopefully they can just be competitive next week. And if they get a win, we can celebrate, but I'm not very optimistic on that front for now. So we'll sign off, but we'll see what happens throughout the week, and appreciate everyone for liking, listening, subscribing, and we'll be back next week.